was saying that we want to work with the older generation. And the Reverend mentioned that as long as we're willing to be on the ground to clean up and work, that we would be given the money. So as Akwe Fellows, I know without a doubt that we will work, but we ask that you give us your money. We will now move on to the closing plenary. We have had a pleasant past couple of days where a lot of important discussions have been shared. I hope that as we reflect on everything that we have learned, that we not only remain here, but we take it back to us in our communities and implement it and continue to advocate and practice Ubuntu in action, because that's what it is. It's not a philosophy, it is an act and a way of living. Our closing plenary will cover conclusions and paths forward, and I'd like to call upon our speakers, which is Luka David Mosoma, who's a former Deputy Vice Chancellor at University of South Africa, and Mr. Ganief Ebrahim Hendricks, who's a Deputy Minister of Social Development, and I believe we're ready.
We are very grateful that we have had a very profound engagement, and we have learned a lot since we arrived here on Monday. We are now drawing this conference to a close. And in doing so, I would like to invite Professor Maniraj to introduce the Deputy Minister.
Friends, it's indeed a privilege for me to be able to introduce the Deputy Minister for Social Development in our South African cabinet. And I must say, I think I harassed the Deputy Minister a few days ago, but he's such a wonderful and humble man, and he was prepared to come and grace us with his presence. He has been flying, I don't know how many trips in this week throughout the country because of the different engagements that he has. And for him to honor us with his presence, Deputy Minister, we are very, very grateful to you. By way of introduction, Deputy Minister, His Excellency Mohammed Ganief Ebrahim Hendricks, he was born and raised in District 6, and currently is a leader of the Al-Jama Party, a Muslim political party that founded along others, was part of the founding of this party in 2007. And after the party was established, he and his team worked towards gaining political posts as councillors. And in this city of Cape Town, the party appointed him as one of the official councillors. So during Honourable Hendricks' term as MP, and that is from April 2019 to May 2024, he was active on a variety of portfolio committees on different fronts. Via these, he extended the party's footprints throughout South Africa. He made sure that the party was set up with rural projects such as the one in Pameni village in the Eastern Cape, and the peanut butter factory in Gradville in KZN. Recently, he served as the Eastern Cape's Kofi Mvaba under his leadership as a Deputy Minister, ensuring that Ministry and Social Development took charge. In South Africa's 2024 national elections, the party succeeded to gain a seat in the parliament as an MP, and since that he has retained that seat. He was approached by the president to become the Deputy Minister of Social Development in 2024. My goodness, I'm also getting old now. The idea, of course, appealed to him, and he accepted the post in the newly formed Government of National Unity, or the coalition government, and he serves currently in that position. And since his official appointment as the Deputy Minister, I strongly believe that he demonstrated his ability to, among others, oversee projects such as the development in the Eastern Cape's Kofi Mvaba Outreach Program, the United Nations Nelson Mandela's Children's Fund that took place in Cape Town, and the Deputy Minister was inducted as the key patron for the National Men's Forum, and he has been initiating many new projects that plan to benefit various sectors of our community, especially the marginalized and disabled and poor. The Honorable Deputy Minister, you're very welcome, and thank you for gracing us with your presence, and we therefore afford you the opportunity to address us this morning.
Allow me to give the traditional greeting, Sanibonani. Good morning, Assalamu alaikum. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today. The G20 Interfaith Forum 2025 is supporting South Africa's G20 presidency. They did not know what they let themselves into, because they had to contend with critical issues that seem to be a threat to the G20 handover that's going to take place in November. I don't think you knew that when you decided to support South Africa's G20 presidency, that South Africa is asserting international law when the drafters are seen to have thrown international law into the waste paper basket. And here I refer to the ICJ case and other cases where South Africa approaches the International Court for justice and fairness and redress. You come to South Africa when inequality has gone from bad to worse, because South Africa is now regarded as the most unequal country in the world. After 30 years of democracy, there has been little recovery of stolen land by beneficiaries of the apartheid system. So you never knew that when you decided to throw your weight behind South Africa, there will be a lot of talk about expropriation with no compensation. That's expropriation of land. Addressing the harm caused by job reservation using BEE and addressing broad-based economic empowerment because of lack of economic opportunities in South Africa seems to have been some obstacles to give us a smooth ride to the handover in November. So your support during these difficult times is highly appreciated. The Rio de Janeiro Declaration emphasized the taxation of billionaires. Are there any billionaires sitting here? Especially from Brazil. I would have liked to know how it affected you. But the Rio de Janeiro Declaration also talked about the fight against poverty. And it was interesting that the African Union declared the year 2025 to be the year that there will be zero poverty in Africa. That hasn't been achieved. And it's interesting that you are now taking the baton and trying to achieve zero poverty and hopefully in Africa. South Africa does have zero poverty. Maybe the amount of funding that we make available in terms of social welfare grants is not as high as many people expected. But in South Africa, from the day you are born and you don't have any income, the country provides a social grant benefit until the day you die. So very quickly, when a child is born until 18, they get a child support grant, besides all the other assistance like school nutrition programs and so on. And then when children reach the age of 18, they are entitled to a NSFAS educational grant to get a degree or a diploma. And those who can't get jobs or are not accepted at university, there's a small grant available which you used to call the COVID grant, which is the forerunner of a basic income grant. So with the high tariffs that has now been imposed on South Africa, our unemployment situation has deteriorated, and there is now a demand for BIG, which is a basic income grant, because the so-called COVID grant is very small. It's only 370 rand. You're all aware of the fact that older persons get a grant, and when you're 75, over 75 like me, you get a bit extra. Look, I may be over 75, but I look younger than many of the men here. Program Director, Master of Ceremonies, Deputy Director, Professor Catherine Marshall, all members of the G20 Interfaith Association Advisory Council here present, distinguished participants of all the faith communities represented here this morning, senior officials of government and civil society organizations, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, may the grace, peace, blessings, boundless light and love be with you all. I'm indeed pleased to have received a kind invitation from the G20 Interfaith Forum's Chairperson, Professor Mosoma, and his two deputy leaders, Mrs. Andile Makasi and Professor Maniraj Sukdaven, who pressurized me to be here this morning to address you at this conference, closing session that address a critical theme, Ubuntu in action, supporting the vulnerable communities. Now, I don't have a quarrel with using the term Ubuntu. We all embrace it. But I would like to remind you that in Africa, after most of the countries achieve uhuru or independence, Julius Nyerere said that the next step is to introduce the concept of righteousness. And that seems to complement what we know as Ubuntu. It's important that we have values such as righteousness, and I'm sure that is what the interfaith community won't have a quarrel to embrace. Supporting vulnerable communities is a theme that resonates with the Department of Social Development, and which I wish to briefly comment. The presidency of South Africa, we feel that the interfaith community can play a very important role in the social challenges that we have when it comes to gender-based violence, when it comes to child pregnancies, also when it comes to many of the social ills that we are grappling with. And we have engaged, the presidency has engaged the interfaith community twice, and have now given a mandate to the Department of Social Development to strengthen the relations between government and the interfaith community. Because we have failed when it comes to addressing gender-based violence. The more we have 16 days of activism, the more men abuse women. We also have problems in a place called Hilltown, where people like President Mandela, many others had their education in a missionary. One would have imagined that Hilltown would have been a very progressive town, where so many of the revolutionaries had their education because they wanted to avoid Bantu education. They went to Hilltown to get proper education by faith leaders like many of you. So when my minister, Sisi Tolasi, went to Hilltown to address the abuse of elders, I was shocked. I told her, why go so far? I think there's an International Day of Elders, abuse of elders. I was shocked to find out that in this town, let's say the symbol of our revolution, the men in that town are considered to be the worst men in the country that abuse their parents and grandparents. Let me thank Professor Cole Durham Jr. as well as his deputy, Professor Catherine Marshall, whose support for this conference has been unwavering, and for having invited me to share some thoughts with the participants at the University of Pretoria's G20 Interfaith Forum planning meeting during mid-February 2025. It was very exciting for me to address you as soon as you landed in South Africa, to throw your weight behind South Africa's G20 presidency. On the present occasion, let me express my gratitude on behalf of the Department of Social Development and our Minister, Sisi Tolasi, the Government of National Unity. I'm a member of the Leaders Forum of that Government of National Unity. And it is something that we spoke about when we were fighting in the trenches. In the trenches, we had resistance fighters from different political parties. We didn't have a quarrel that the African National Congress should lead us. And we felt one day, when the African National Congress leads us in government, that they should accommodate many of us in their government. That hasn't been done successfully, but the Government of National Unity is now a step in that direction. In the past, South Africa was governed by one political party, the African National Congress. And now it is governed by 10 political parties, which may go to 12. So I understand coalition politics, because there was a time in the city of Joburg that we were asked by 10 political parties to take up the mayoral parlor in Joburg. And we managed to keep that coalition of 10, 11 political parties together. And in our first year, we got a clean audit as Al-Jama, and also in the second year. And then there were the normal controversies. And now we have a mayor that has been put on terms. The Minister of Finance has threatened to withdraw funding because they're messing up the finances of the city. So the GNU is something new, and it is very surprising that the members of the GNU, when we meet as a forum, we agree on critical issues like the national dialogue, and you know the convention is being held from Friday onwards. And then some of the very people who give their support outside the Leaders Forum then criticize it and wants to sabotage it. So there's a credibility problem, and I'm asking the faith leaders, please pray for the Democratic Alliance and the Freedom Front, who give undertakings, and after giving the undertakings, they go back on their word. Because you cannot, as a Leaders Forum, agree on critical issues and turn your back when there's consensus that that's the way forward. The people of South Africa have acknowledged the leadership of His Excellency President Ramaphosa. So we would like to thank all the delegates for having graced our beautiful city of Cape Town, the mother city, with their august presence, and this is the month of August, and dignified participation. Over the past few days, this G20 Interfaith Forum Conference turned out a record crowd that passionately participated in the plenaries and breakaway sessions. As a result of each one's interactive participation, many described it as a highly successful gathering. The last session, the intergenerational session, I didn't see any intergenerational challenges because the panelists all spoke as young people. There were no of the older generation. There's a very youthful discussion which we listened to. Lest it be forgotten, this event forms part of a series of high-level engagements for South Africa's presidency of the G20 presidency since the 1st of December 2024, and the series will culminate in the G20 Leaders Summit towards the end of November 2025. And I hope that the challenges you had in throwing a weight behind South Africa will give you the strength to deal with Donald Trump when he takes over the G20. Let me add that it is the first time that South Africa's presidency hosted the series. In other words, the only African country that has presided over the series of G20 activities. Our country, under President Ramaphosa's leadership, sought to effectively use its G20 presidency platform to place onto G20 agenda the Global South and the African continent's development priorities. For this reason, the theme solidarity, equality, sustainability was consciously adopted. And our President has engaged the Minister of Social Development to find out what progress my department is making to strengthen the relationship between the interfaith sector and government, because we feel that the outcomes of this conference, and we look forward to your closeout report and the recommendations that you are going to make to help South Africa deal with the problems, for example, of gender-based violence. I hope that one of the outcomes will not be this time around to tax the millionaires after Brazil taxed the billionaires. The G20 President's elected theme, I should say, resonates with the work and contribution of several faith communities across the globe, many of which are represented at this G20 Interfaith Forum conference. The fact that our local committee convened such an important conference since Sunday, the 10th of August, until today, the 14th of August, indicates that the participant voices at G20 Interfaith Forum were considered central to international development discourse, its global cooperation agenda, and promoting world peace. And also, I hope to stop starvation, especially where starvation is being used to win wars. From my perspective, I think that your conscious choice of the conference theme, Ubuntu in Action, supporting the vulnerable communities, ties in with the Department of Social Development's agenda that strives to serve these vulnerable communities. In this era of heightened geopolitical tension among various groups, increasing nationalism in certain nation states, and rising right-wing political activities in so-called democratic environments, these developments threaten to reverse the gains achieved through global cooperation, mutual respect among nations, and open, robust interaction. Factoring in these and other negative developments, I am of the view that faith communities such as yourself and peace movements need your critical, prayerful voices to address harmful global challenges, as we have with regard to the genocide in Palestine, India's stranglehold of Jammu and Kashmir for desiring their independence, and Morocco's control over Western Sahara and the Arab Republic. I have no doubt that the few days' deliberations generated positive presentations, constructive discussions, and collective solutions on matters that affect all our vulnerable communities. I can imagine that the oral and written representation in both the plenaries and the breakaway sessions resulted in vigorous discussions between the panel presenters and the audience from the conference rapporteurs, I was informed of good discourses, among others, regarding the reduction, eradication of poverty, the brief reflections on the desperate refugee status, the tearful images of displaced persons, and the critical importance of humanitarian aid to starving, malnourished children. After many of them were minced, the rest are now being starved, and the ongoing demand to bring about gender equality. Allow me to state that in our beloved South Africa, faith communities have and continue to play a crucial role in advancing the national development agenda. At the height of COVID-19 pandemic, members of our communities have witnessed extraordinary acts of courage and love. They demonstrated acts of solidarity and support for the most vulnerable population at the time of their greatest need. And I think the interfaith communities in South Africa, all over the world, must be complimented for saving many, many lives because of their direct intervention. Today, our religious institutions may be described as resilient in undertaking valuable work in strengthening families and improving the educational offerings, sharing much-needed skills, training to empower young people, tackling the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide, and providing humanitarian relief assistance in the face of the frequent natural disasters, and climate change is one of the issues that you have spent a lot of time on. I just want to speak a bit more about the need to strengthen families. And that is also one of my delegations in the Department of Social Development. We need to take example of Chief Albert Luthuli, and many of you may be following the reopening of the inquest into his murder. Chief Albert Luthuli got the Nobel Peace Prize, and he made a point of having breakfast with his family whenever he could while he was in Groundville. And when I shared that story with my deputy president in Parliament, he instructed all the male members of Parliament, whenever they at home, to have breakfast with the family. And Chief Albert Luthuli would ask the girls, what were your challenges? Some of them were working, some of them were in high school, and some of them were busy with higher education. He had an extended family. And after listening to the challenges of especially the girls, he would ask the boys, now what are you going to do to help them? So he put fatherhood at the center of the family. At a very young age, he emphasized the importance of fatherhood. South Africa is in a dilemma at the moment. We've been promoting equality between men and women, and I don't have a quarrel with that. But as a result of promoting equality between men and women, we find that fathers started abdicating their responsibilities. Now that we have 50% women, 50% men, for example, in Parliament, we still have some work to do in business. I think we need to spend more time on fatherhood and strengthening families. Through South Africa's G20 presidency and the Department of Social Development's participation in the G20 Interfaith Forum, the aim is to harness and deepen the partnership that exists with faith communities. The partnership is meant to address development challenges confronting the global societies at large and the vulnerable communities in particular. I think at nearly every cabinet meeting, the President wants to hear from the Minister of Social Development. Are we strengthening? Is your department on behalf of government strengthening the relations between the interfaith community and government? So it's a clear mandate to my department to work closely with you. And that's why I made a special effort to be here today, looking forward to the narratives, the advice that we can get from the G20 and use that to address the challenges that we have today. Over the last 3 decades and in partnership with faith communities, the government has transformed the lives of millions of South Africans by providing the necessities of life and creating opportunities that never existed before 1994. In truth, South Africa is still work in progress, and it is daily challenge to keep building bridges in spite of the various obstacles that the country's communities face. We continue trying to build bridges in spite of Donald Trump trying to break down these bridges. So America is an important trading partner. And instead of following the Gaddafi option, and that is too long to explain, we still stretch our hand to America to continuing business with us, because some of the products that they import from us, they actually need. You don't cut your nose to spite your face, which is what they seem to be doing at the moment. The challenges of poverty, unemployment, landlessness, and the divisions around race, class, and gender make it difficult to arrive at a socially cohesive and united society as fast as the government wants. The journey towards a kind of society envisaged by Madiba and other forebearers of a liberation struggle is long with various challenges along the path, but if all of us look back, and I can confidently say that all of us has every reason to celebrate the obstacles that were encountered along the path. As we prepare for the national dialogue, which President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke about during his recent State of the Nation address, I hope that the G20 Interfaith Forum planning meeting and conference will lay a solid foundation for the South African faith communities to consolidate and solidify their position on matters of national interest. We appreciate the fact that you've thrown your weight behind South Africa's presidency of the G20. We now call on you, the interfaith community, not only from South Africa, but from the G20, because all of you are here from the different continents, to throw your weight behind our national convention, where 600 people will convene at the University of South Africa, guided by 75 of the best thought leaders and the best minds in the country. What a wonderful opportunity for people from all walks of life will be represented. I've seen a list of the delegates that will be attending, and there's a list of over 100 kinds of people. I always thought there can only be one, but I suddenly saw, they classified people from rural areas, from villages, captains of industry. Practically every kind of people that can imagine is now represented at the National Convention. And they are coming together to prepare an agenda that must go out to every ward in the country. South Africa has over 10,000 wards. So let me explain, those of you who don't understand our system. In the city of Joburg, you have about 120 wards. In the city of Cape Town, 110 wards. So every municipality has got a number of wards, and the tally is about 10 to 15,000. So the idea of the National Convention is to take the agenda to every ward in the country 3 times over the next 2 years. 3 times. To find out from the people in the wards, what do you have to say? What new issues do you want to raise? We have a number of professors who will put all this together, and then South Africa will have its second national convention, where we will deal with substantive issues. So the convention that is being held on Friday is to deal with procedural matters. We're not going to solve the country's problems. We're just going to sit around with our thought leaders that will guide us, such as the many thought leaders that you had at your 4-day gathering, where they guided us and assisted us, and that is what we're doing at the National Convention. So the call to action is for the interfaith community to throw their weight behind the national dialogue, the first national convention, and to create excitement for the second national convention that will take place in 2026. So many people are saying that this is all a farce, it is fake. It's a build-up to the ANC's election campaign for 2026. It's nothing like that. The country is not run by the ANC, it is run by 10 political parties in the government of national unity. And the ANC is very careful in that forum not to upset the other 9 leaders of the Leaders Forum of the Government of National Unity. The national dialogue will bring South Africans from all walks of life to reflect on our long journey to freedom, the progress that the country has made so far, and to define a vision for the country for the next 30 years. We're drawing up a 30-year master plan. The first 30-year master plan, which you all know as CODESA, did not work. It created a situation where South Africa became the most unequal country in the world. So we were worse off than we were during apartheid, and I know that is debatable. So CODESA provided sunset clauses, all kinds of tricks by the former oppressors, and now there's a danger that there's going to be the space for a return to apartheid. And that is clouded by efforts to create a regime change in South Africa. But what is worrying is that the foundations, the legacy foundations, Thabo Mbeki Foundation, Steve Biko and others, have somehow or another abandoned, and I've got 1 minute left, abandoned the principles of the people they are trying to honor. It is very sad that they have done that. They should have come to the convention and sorted things out, so now we lose the advantage of the benefits of their expertise. In conclusion, I would like to once again thank the Interfaith Forum, the G20 Interfaith Forum, for throwing their weight behind South Africa in the run-up to the main event in November. And I'm sure that what you've decided here over the last 4 days will help us to conclude a very successful G20 when we hand the G20 over to Donald Trump. And I see some of you are already scratching your head. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister Hendricks, for your message of enlightenment, providing, as it were, the political side of your understanding of the relationship between poverty and hunger and what government is doing to address that. Thank you also for your readiness as government to work with the interfaith sector in the country so that their work, which is very, very commendable, I think not only in South Africa but across the globe, should continue as a liberational act of the people of God generally. I now call upon the following persons to come to the fore. I start off with Bishop Sipuka, who will make some inputs. From there, I'll then call the next speaker. Bishop Sipuka, he was part of us here. I think he needs no introduction. He is the chairperson of the South African Council of Churches. Over to you, Bishop.
Encouraged by the invitation of the minister to be partners in constructing the social fiber of our society and to make some recommendations to them. The first one, Minister, that I'm going to put is that please let us have our children on weekends as faith leaders. There is a phenomenon in this country where children go to school from Sunday to Sunday. They don't have time to be with families. They don't have time to do house chores. They don't have time to come to our churches and temples and synagogues so that we can form them. And there is a surprise when they turn out to be how they turn out to be. Our children have been taken away from us and we want a share of them. Let school be done, please, Minister, from Monday to Friday, and then on Saturday and Sunday during weekends. Let us also make our contribution to do what you are asking us to do. Please convey this message to the government. I'll be grateful. Mine really is to do some closing remarks As we prepare to leave this sacred gathering, my brothers and sisters, I am reminded of the African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. These 4 days in Cape Town have shown us that we Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, traditional African spiritualists, and all faith traditions represented here, we have chosen to go far together. We came to Cape Town under the banner of Ubuntu in Action, focus on vulnerable communities. Ubuntu has taught us that our humanity is interconnected. I am because you are. But this week we have discovered something profound. Ubuntu is not just a philosophy, it is a prophecy. It calls us beyond mere acknowledgement of our connectedness to active responsibility for one another's dignity. When we heard from our Indonesian colleagues about education that cultivates cross-cultural religious literacy, when our Islamic brothers and sisters spoke of justice and peace, when our Christian communities shared about serving the marginalized, when our Jewish traditions reminded us of Jubilee justice, when our Hindu and Buddhist communities spoke of compassion in action, we were not hearing different messages. We were hearing the same divine call in different sacred languages. But let me speak with honesty that our faith demands. This forum has held up a mirror to our own souls as religious leaders. And what we see is both inspiring and convicting. We have confronted uncomfortable truths about ourselves as faith leaders. Too often we claim to serve the God of the poor, while those poor view us with suspicion. Why? Because our proximity to power has sometimes made us complicit in systems that perpetuate injustice. It's easy for religious leaders to be co-opted by those in power for the benefits offered, and in exchange lose our prophetic stance to stand and be the voice of the voiceless. This sometimes results in religious leaders living in mansions while their congregants queue for food parcels. It leads into our institutions accumulating wealth while children in our communities go hungry. It leads into us religious leaders blessing policies that oppress rather than liberate, where we become part of the problem we claim to solve. It leads into some of us living very luxurious life at the expense of the very people we claim to love and to serve. Let us ask ourselves, how can we speak against the corruption in governments and corporations while ignoring the corruption in our own hearts and institutions? If we demand transparency from others, should we not model it ourselves? If we call for justice in society, should we not practice it in our faith communities first? Let me say something briefly about the 5 pillars that we explored over these days. Over these days, we have examined 5 critical areas where our faith must move from rhetoric to reality. Food security and human dignity. My wish is that we could commit ourselves not merely to feeding the hungry, but to transforming the systems that create hunger. The World Council of Churches, Caritas organizations, World Visions, Islamic Relief, LDS charities, and countless others are already demonstrating what interfaith cooperation can achieve. As we conclude this conference and go back to our bases, let us commit to establishing food security projects in every faith community represented here, not as charity that creates dependency, but as empowerment that restores dignity. Let us commit to reviving traditional farming wisdom, establishing community gardens, and building agricultural value chains that honor both the creation and creator. Regarding economic justice and debt cancellation, my wish is that we could commit to becoming accountability partners in the Jubilee call for debt cancellation. Let us commit to not simply advocating for debt relief, but let us also commit to guaranteeing its integrity and its good use for the benefit of the vulnerable. Through our community networks, let us aspire to establish transparent tracking systems to ensure that cancelled debt reaches the poor, not the corrupt. The Jewish notion of Jubilee restoration, our Christian community's moral authority, our Islamic community's principles of economic justice that prohibit exploitation. Together, I hope we can build an accountability covenant that ensures justice reaches those who need it most. From the powerful keynote address on education presented here, we heard how education is the greatest equalizer, with transformative potential to level the playing fields and create opportunities for all, perfectly embodying the themes of solidarity, equality, and sustainability that have guided this G20 Interfaith Forum. Quality education and religious education can serve as means to cultivate cross-cultural religious literacy and eliminate attitudes and behaviors which include hostility towards people of other faiths. As we part, my wish is that we could commit to transforming our educational approaches. Let us commit to establishing interfaith educational partnership that teach not literacy and numeracy, but social, emotional, and spiritual intelligence. Through cross-cultural religious literacy, may we be able to help end the devastating wars fought in the name of religion that humiliate, brutalize, and kill children and the elderly. May our madrasas, our church schools, our temple institutions, our community centers become laboratories of Ubuntu, places where children learn that difference is not division, but a tapestry of diversity created by the pleasure and joy of divine design. About migration and human dignity, I want to note that fear of migrants and refugees affects politics in many settings and calls for religious advocacy for compassion and care. My hope is that as we part, we could commit to being practical sanctuaries of hope for migrants and refugees. May our mosques, churches, temples, and synagogues open not just our doors, but our communities to those fleeing violence and seeking opportunity. Regarding climate justice and creation care, I invite us to commit to the treatment of creation with care as a sacred duty. The world's future requires a vision of development that can be sustained in the long run. My wish is that our faith communities could become models of sustainable living, champions of renewable energy, and prophetic voices for environmental justice. Pope Francis, of happy memories, called religious leaders to have, and I quote, the smell of the sheep they claim to pastor. Not to smell differently from the people they claim to care for, but to live so close to those we serve that their struggles become our struggles, their hopes become our hopes. This is not just a Christian calling, it is the essence of all authentic spirituality. My wish is that we could commit to pastoral proximity over political comfort. Let us commit to spending more time in informal settlements than in government offices, more time with the unemployed than with the employed elite, more time listening to the cries of the poor than to the promises of the politicians. When we speak, may we speak not as outsiders looking in, but as insiders looking up, from the perspective of those whose dignity is daily denied, whose hopes are daily deferred, whose humanity is daily diminished. Let me be clear about what distinguishes this moment from countless other gatherings. We have not gathered here to issue another statement, calling on the governments, calling on the business and corporations, and calling on politicians to act. The poor are tired of our calls. The poor are hungry for our commitment. My hope is that as interfaith leaders, we could commit ourselves to action. My wish is that every faith community represented here could take the initiative, not waiting for perfect conditions, not depending on external funding, but beginning where we are with what we have for whom we serve. Rather than setting rigid timelines that may become empty promises, let each of us return home and begin. Some may act immediately, others may need time for consultation and planning. What matters is not the speed of our response, but the sincerity of our commitment. Instead of a universal deadline, let us each ask, what is the first step my community can take? What can we begin? How will we measure our faithfulness, not just a success? So to my fellow Christians, Jesus said, by their fruits you will know them. The world is watching our fruits, not just listening to our words. To our Muslim brothers and sisters, the Quran reminds us that faith without righteous action is incomplete. Our actions must reflect our submission to Allah's justice. To our Jewish friends, the tradition of tikkun olam, repairing the world, and the ancient notion of Jubilee restoration call us to righteous action that restores justice. To our Hindu and Buddhist colleagues, the principle of Dharma calls us to righteous action that upholds cosmic order. To our traditional African spiritualists, our ancestors judge us not by what we promise, but by what we preserve for future generations. To all of us, the vulnerable communities we claim to serve are not objects of our charity, they are the measure of our authenticity. And so as we leave Cape Town, my hope is that we could live not as individual faith traditions returning to separate spheres, but as an Ubuntu coalition aspiring to shared action. Let us say we will sign with our lives, not just our signatures, a covenant that calls us to transparency in our own institutions before demanding it from others, service to the marginalized as the measure of our spiritual maturity, accountability to each other as guardians of this sacred trust, prophetic courage to speak truth to all powers, including religious power, practical action that transforms systems, not just symptoms. The children of the global south, the poor of this world, the marginalized of every nation are not waiting for our next conference. They are waiting for our conversion. From talkers to doers, from advocates to agents, from religious leaders to radical servants. Ubuntu teaches us that we are because others are. Today we commit to ensuring that others can be because we have been. Not because we spoke beautifully about their plight, but because we acted boldly for their liberation. When the history of this moment is written, may it record not what the G20 Interfaith Forum called for, but what it committed to. Not the eloquence of our speeches, but the faithfulness of our service. The God of all faiths, known by many names, but recognized by one love, has called us not to be successful, but to be faithful. Not to be applauded, but to be authentic. Not to be comfortable, but to be converted. May we leave Cape Town not as we came, as separate traditions with good intentions, but as we must go, as one interfaith family with sacred commitments, carrying the smell of the sheep, bearing the burden of the broken, embodying the hope of the hopeless. The world is waiting. The poor are watching. God is calling. Let us act because we are, and others shall be, not because we have called, but because we have acted. Amen. Inshallah. Shalom. Om. Asante sana.
Thank you. Another round of applause. This is more than just a speech. This is more than a speech. It prickles our consciousness and it questions our commitment, whether what we do is in the best interest of what we say we want to do. Bishop, thank you so much for such profound eloquence. And your use of adjectives was so spot on. Are we capable of being transformed to become the vessels that God can use to create His kingdom on earth, using our diverse faiths? Thank you so much, Bishop. Much appreciated. Now, let me invite Whitney Clayton, the Executive Director of the Interfaith. Yeah, he's going to you. Oh, okay, sorry. Let me call Lilia Casanova.
Thank you so much. I'm standing here with a heart full of gratitude and deep sense of connection. We are meeting at a time when the world feels like it's on fire. And I don't mean just the headlines. I mean the deeper fractures, the inequalities, the conflicts that have lasted far, far too long at this point. And yet, over the past few days, I witnessed something extraordinary. As part of the ACWay youth program, the IF20 program, 55 young people from 25 countries and 13 religious and faith traditions came together. And they came together not just to attend sessions, but to go on a journey. And over the past several days, the transformation was incredible. We built a community, we built trust, we found courage. And most importantly, we're leaving with the motivation to act. We began with a full-day program on Sunday, right before the main forum has started, and the transformation was clear. I hope you saw all the young people in the sessions. Young people are standing taller, speaking louder day by day, and dreaming bolder. This was our goal, and I think it is a reality now. Most importantly, we planted seeds for future action that will live beyond this forum. Last night at our closing event, we had 10 young people to pitch the ideas of the grassroots interfaith action that they will take back in their communities. Whether it's an opening a soup kitchen in the Cape Town interfaith initiative, whether it's organizing an interfaith poetry jam, or skills workshop for the other young people who are struggling these days. And I would like to say a big thank you for people who made this possible. This year, this is an extraordinary year with the amount of youth participation. I would like to say thank you to Sandile Makasi and the whole local organizing team for welcoming us with such generosity and care. I'd like to say thank you to Professor Cole Durham and Professor Catherine Marshall, to the whole IF20 team. Also, thank you for opening up the space. This year, there were at least 13 young professionals speaking at the side panels. We all witnessed the intergenerational panel, so I beg you, let's make this a tradition. Let's make this from year to year, having an intergenerational panel. Because at this point, it is clear. There is no lasting solution without intergenerational alliances. And what we've seen here is alliances among youth, but also intergenerationally. I hope you had a chance to talk to each other and among each other. To our partners and continuous supporters, and you know who you are, thank you so much for making this possible. Those organizations are the ones who believe that ACWay is not just a project, but it's a youth movement. Those who would like to support the youth participation and youth activism, come talk to us. We have a network of 300 young individuals in more than 85 countries who continue doing these interfaith activities on the ground. To the incredible ACWay team, and you know who you are, thank you so much. You pulled something unbelievable in the past month. And most importantly, to our cohort this year, thank you so much. You are unbelievable. Your energy, your expertise that you bring to the room. Thank you for reminding me what this work is all about. And just to complete briefly, I think there are 3 lessons that we're taking away from this. And I hope you agree with me, my young cohort leaders. First is that after chaos, there always comes change. And how this change looks like, it's up for us to decide. And we are at this turning point where it is time to bring change. Second, we must have courage to have difficult conversations. In spaces like this, not just among youth, but in generally. If we can't create this space here, how can we expect that from our politicians and the world leaders? Let's create a brave space starting from among the youth and IF20. And we witnessed it here, and I hope it will continue. Third, ambition means nothing without action, as I already gave you some examples. And action is easier when you remember that you're not alone. This Youth Forum and IF20, I hope, was a reminder that across continents and countries, there are people who are fighting for the same cause as you are, for dignity, for inclusion, for peace. There are so many people who are ready to walk with you, to learn from you, and stand by you. This youth program was not about building skills. This youth program was about building a community. It is about building a generation that doesn't just survive conflicts and negotiates its aftermath, but the one who creates future. A generation that prevents conflicts, whether starting in our neighborhoods, schools, communities, online, as we heard today. Because our peace is each other's peace. Our liberation is shared. This is Ubuntu, this is Akwe, this is IF20, and that's why we're doing this from year after year, and we will continue doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian. We are aware that as we enter the twilight of our life as elderly people, we are living a generation that is well formed and the character is well shaped, especially as you articulate what are the key elements that form the existence of your organization. I think they are well articulated, and we hope that the majority of our young people in the country will benefit from your efforts. Thank you so much. I now call upon Whitney Clayton, Reverend Whitney Clayton. Is he here? Okay, come over.
Four things. One, gratitude. I had never been to South Africa before the privilege I've had of participating in planning for this event. Imagine my fortune when in planning for the event, I get invited into a local lehotla, into an imbizu, with my brothers and sisters here locally. Prof. Mosoma, my brother. Prof. Maniraj, my brother. Michael Swain, my most unexpected personal pastor. Sandile, our Sibonda. All of his team, Jackson, Walton, Bongi, the Coopers, thank you very much. Our local organizing committee. Prof. Mocheka, I love you, brother. Loved working with you. Love meeting your family. Avase, Rainier, Sylvia, Professor Haron, thank you everyone for the privilege of working with you. To my friend Inez Adams, my dear friend, for all the work she did in preparation for this event, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Yashika, South African Broadcasting Company, thank you for what you've done to bring the attention to this and the professionalism to our message. King Bongwe, I was in the green room 2 days ago, a lovely young woman, beautiful baby, wrapped up, asleep on the couch. I walked in, it was just them. The baby started to stir. I didn't know her, but I know a beautiful baby when I see one. I like a good baby. And I said, may I bounce the baby? And she generously offered to a foreigner, sure. So I picked up the baby. I did a 20-minute meeting with our Vice Chairwoman, Catherine Marshall, bouncing the baby who fell asleep in my arms. And then I asked her, how did we find you, or how did you find us? And she said, my parents are here. I said, "Who's your father?" And she said, "The king." I said, "Do you mean to tell me that I'm bouncing the crown prince right now?" And she said, "Yes." What a wonderful introduction to the warmth and the future of South Africa. Thank you. To all of our volunteers, particularly on Sandile's team, the local volunteers and the participants from Akwe, thank you. Thank you, Lilia. Thank you to our wonderful MCs, Sandile 2.0, and Judith. Thank you to our generous co-sponsors and participants, the Sterling Foundation, Islamic Relief USA, the Interfaith Alliance for Safer Communities, to my Muslim Council of Elder Brothers, Brother Muhammad, Brother Adama, to my future brother, Judge Muhammad Abdul Salam, who I look forward to meeting. Thank you very much. I stand and we stand in this conference on the shoulders of giants, so enormous gratitude, and one quick round of applause for our chairman and vice chairwoman, Catherine Marshall and Cole Durham. Thank you. Number 2, humility. We hear you. We don't pretend to be perfect. We don't think we're perfect. We know that there are elements of the gathering that are and remain imperfect. We pledge to you our best effort, we pledge to you our sincerity, and we pledge to listen. Shortly there will be a QR code that will go up on the screen with what I think is a fairly robust exit survey. We want your feedback, we crave it. We will continue to put our best efforts into making each year's forum better and better. We've heard engagement, youth participation, leadership from our women, leadership from our traditional leaders, and a focus on results. NATO, no action, talk only, focus on results. We will be headed towards what we call the IF20 2.0, which will include greater focus on those items with the technical capital, sharing our best practices so that we can learn from each other, and the social capital, people that we can collaborate with. So number 3, my holy envy. I have seen many things in your traditions, in your faiths, in your organizations, for which I feel holy envy. Thank you for sharing with me. I ask you to consider in your holy envy that you have perhaps experienced at this event, what has moved your soul and what has touched your heart. What do you feel called to do as a result of your participation this week? Your heart will be your guide, and the call that you hear will come from your God. Follow it. So number 4, I'll do the introduction at the end. My name is Whitney Clayton. I've been in this job for 5 months. It's an honor, unspeakably, one of the honors of my lifetime, to work with you. What I have seen in the 5 months since starting has been watching God in His uniqueness and in your uniqueness, working in your lives, in your organizations, and in your projects, in your service. By observing that in you, I have had greater insight in recognizing it in myself. And to me, that is what I learned about Ubuntu in South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Whitney, for your vote of thanks. We feel loved, accommodated, and appreciated. I think it's a work that required team spirit, collaboration, attention to details, management, and even oversight. And we have done that as a collective local committee, as well as the international committee who work together. And that's why the product is so beautiful as a consequence of that. Thank you so much. I now call the Deputy President of the G20 Interfaith Forum, Professor Catherine Mashel to address us.
I'm smaller than some of the other people here. I hope we're going to hear a little bit from you, Professor Mosoma, because you started us off, in fact, reminding us to take a moment to remember the people who are suffering in the world, to remember the violence that's taking place, the hunger, the people who don't have opportunities. And I think that through this is on our minds. And for many of us, there are echo after echo of the words we've heard. One that still resonates for me is hearing that we're in an angry nation. And I think we're in an angry nation in the United States as well, and in other parts of the world. And it is our privilege, but also our duty and our responsibility to remember that. We've heard so much about Ubuntu and the spirit of Ubuntu, but I remember also Ebrahim Rasul's reminder that there's a hard edge to Ubuntu, which is that I am my brother's keeper, that we have the responsibility to act. So with words and ideas and experience, prophetic voices, calls to action, demands for action, for peace, for caring, for compassion, I think we all leave with a powerful sense of what we can do and what we must do together. I started out talking about something that echoes in my mind always, which is this phrase, NATO. No action, talk only. And so through these days, I have been echoing or thinking of alternatives, and I came up with some other acronyms of BRAVE and GRACE. The one that I'm going to mention now is ADVANCE, because it has some words in it that I think reflect our discussions here. So A is for accountability, something we heard time and time again, that we have, and we need to build practical mechanisms for accountability. I think we heard a lot about determination, commitment to action, a vision, inspired and directed vision, the prophetic voice, action, and the courage for action. Now that this is a Kairos moment, that this is a moment when we can be transformational. The crisis is danger and opportunity. Compassion, grace, and spirit, and finally, empowerment and inspiration. So those, I think, are some of the thoughts that echo as we move away from talk and the need for dialogue and learning from each other to action. So I'll end with just one thing. In a theater, what happens at the end is that one by one, the cast comes out and takes a bow. We can't do that here, but let's imagine everyone, the sound technicians, the people who've served us food, the people who've arranged our hotels, they all need to come out. Each one of you who's participated in any of these plenaries and panels, who's contributed your discussions, who's written blogs, who's posted on social media, thank you to all of you. Thank you so much also to our colleagues in the G20 Interfaith family. It is a family of people who are volunteers. Almost everyone is doing this work because of caring and passion. They volunteer hours and hours of time, many Zoom calls, many hours on planes. So for the large team from Utah, I'd add the team from Georgetown, the foundations that have helped us over the years and had patience with us. But I think that the greatest, the final call of this cast as they come to the stage is the local organizing committee. Our friends, as Whitney has highlighted, who have put in so much effort and made this event a truly South African event, where we have learned about South Africa, about South Africa's challenges. We're reminded of the miracle of South Africa's transition, which is very much in my professional life and experience. 1994 was a great year, a year with Mandela, who remains, I think, one of the greatest inspirations among all world leaders ever. He is our model, Mandiba, our example, but so many others, men and women, young and old. So a special thanks to all of you. I won't name people, I won't go into that because we don't have time and the planes are waiting. But I wanted to end with this sense of deep appreciation for the learning, for the fellowship, for the caring, for the passion, for the disagreements about how we should handle what we should do. And with this commitment that we will be taking our issues, our 5 issues, but also the others, forward in every way that our imagination, our energy, our creativity, our intelligence, and our spirit allows. Because we care, we believe so deeply that the voices that you represent, the experience you represent, the commitment you represent, belong at the tables all the way from the most senior leadership in the world, which is reflected in the G20, to every community and every family. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a wonderful act of appreciation and gratitude. Thank you. His Majesty, the King Mahlangu, has requested to have a word. And who am I, as a subject, to refuse the king if he says he wants to have a word? I would like to invite him to take the podium.
I should say thank you. Greeting to everybody again. We've been greeting each other. His Excellency Minister, Deputy President of G20, all the organizers in this place, professors, academics, religions, all the interfaith. We thank you for such of an opportunity and a moment to host the G20 in South Africa. It is a privilege. We've been held here. We've been educated here. We've been in a hospital. We're out of the ICU. Indeed, we can say whatever that G20 and interfaith, because interfaith is our home, us as religion and as the believers and as religious as well, and culture, that is where it lies. Now it is our responsibility that we are going and work. And we are so delighted being partaking within these gatherings. So we saw that we can do it together. Let's pull together. We'll win, we'll succeed. And it shows the interface that they gave us the opportunity of participating, of planning. We're no longer crying. Says the world, the Africa and the continent, and the entire globe of the continent of the world. We're in safe hands. Let's unite as we have thrived within this, and let's advocate peace. Ubuntu, we thank you for different tribes. We saw all religions. It was in a spirit, and we have healed. We have hope now. Now we have hope. We heard our ministers, guest speakers, that you are aligned, working with us as the interface and the G20. We are one. Prof. Mutsecha and many speakers have said, we are created, our God is sun, the earth and the soil, and the water you're drinking. So thank you for everything that you have done. And also the organizers in such of a good event. Maybe in centuries, as we are living here, we're never going to see this in South Africa. But we are already in, count us in, wherever we're moving. We are not going to stop. We are at your disposal. Let's work together. I thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we have done well. And when we had meetings, there were very critical voices in the meeting. And some of the critical voices were from Professor Motsecha, Maniraj, Michael Sway, and others. Because we were wrestling with how to make sure that the conference succeeds. And I want to thank you for entrusting the leadership of G20 to me as your leader, and you listen to me and you work together. I just want to appreciate this moment. I had men and women of dedication who gave their all for the success of the G20 conference. Thank you, thank you. Sandile has been very meticulous because he took the conference. Can you stand up, please? Thank you so much. He came in at a time when the conference was just about to collapse. And your intervention saved the situation. Here we are today because of you in many ways, and our support as well. Einstein once said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking or tools we have used to create them. One of the key questions I've been asking is whether the tools of conferencing and dialogue, are they new or old? Or were they used to create the problems we are dealing with today? And my answer was no. It's a new way, new tools, because the tools that we are responsible for creating the problems we are trying to solve are the problems of domination, the problems of separation, the problems of inequality, the problems that looked down upon others. So today, we have honed new skills, new ways of being, and new ways of creating communities. What remains? What remains is that we need a plan. The plan with time frame. A plan which must be assessed for its efficacy and effectiveness. Unless we do this would appear to be like one of those many conferences we've had. The call, the agitation, the type of activities that we had agreed we're going to do must shape the future of G20 going forward. And we've agreed, at least speaking to some of the G20 members, that we need a legacy project to continue the work. Now that we have got the South African theme, solidarity, equality, and sustainability, interpreted globally, continentally, and locally, it is important for South Africans to draw strength, understanding, and intellectual analysis and use that, and how best can we use these three concepts to build communities in South Africa. And with these few words, I want to say, have a bon voyage, but before I do that, Catherine will dissolve the congregation. I invite her to dissolve the congregation.
I have to say that's a first for me. I don't know how to dissolve a congregation. But I think what it means is thank you once again, onward and upward, advance and forward. So thank you all so much and have a wonderful trip home. And let's remain friends for the duration.
Before you all depart, I'm sure you can see on the screen there's a QR code. This QR code is a way for the G20 Interfaith Forum to receive feedback of your experience. We kindly ask that you scan the code, fill out the form, and give the organization a reflection of your experience. Thank you.